Hey everybody, welcome back. We are continuing our Running Smart conversations on how we can be the healthiest runners possible. Today we are going to dig deep into 3 other of the training errors that we talked about. And the 3 that we're going to talk about are excessive hill running, excessive slow long distance runs, and continually running on a cambered surface. Let's dig in. First thing, when I was filming this, it was mid-April and about 10 to 15 degrees outside. So I'm wearing a summery shirt just to kind of lift my spirits. I hope you guys like it. Anyway, moving on. The reason that I'm grouping these 3 training errors together is that the mechanism that might cause the tissue overload and potential running related injury are similar in all 3. And basically it's because each of those 3 scenarios is putting a similar stress through the same tissues over and over and over. So let's start with hill running. When you're running uphill, there's a ton of benefits, and we'll probably get into that later when we talk about some training tips and different type of workouts you can do. But the thing that hill running does is when you are moving uphill, there is a lot of demand put on your posterior calf musculature. So that's including your gastroc muscle, your soleus muscle, your tibialis posterior, and a couple others. So if you're finding yourself running up hills constantly, you're putting a lot of strain through the back of the calf, which could lead to some tissue overload in some of those muscles I just mentioned. Conversely, if you're doing excessive hill running, that's going to also include a lot of downhill. Running downhills is going to put a lot of stress on the tibialis anterior, which is a muscle in the front of the shin, as well as a lot of demand on the quad muscle and a lot of patellofemoral compression. So your kneecap, when you're running downhill, gets a lot of compression between the patella and the femur. And that can lead to a lot of increased stress through the knee joint and could potentially lead to things like runner's knee, patellofemoral pain, and some other nagging injuries in the knee. So running hills is a good thing, but excessive running can put overload on those tissues, both for the uphill and the downhill, if your body isn't prepared for it. Next, let's talk about excessive amounts of long, slow distance runs. The reason that this one is put into this category is because a long, slow distance run is going to mean basically one thing, that you're putting a stress through a tissue for a really long period of time. So if you are doing excessive long, slow distance runs, the same tissues are going to be getting loaded for excessively long amounts of periods of time that sometimes tissues just can't tolerate. And remember, slow is a relative term that goes for each individual runner. So someone's slow might be 8 minutes per mile and someone else's slow might be 13 minutes per mile. It's really runner dependent. The key for this one is just trying to avoid the same stress on tissues for an excessive amount of time. The third and final training error we're touching today is running consistently on cambered or sloped surfaces. So typically when we run, we have to run on the left side of the road going towards oncoming traffic. When you're running on a cambered surface, your left leg is getting different stresses than your right. And typically when people develop a running related injury from running on cambered surfaces, it's because of the stresses put on the left leg. It's going to put excess stress on the outside of the knee joint, so things like your IT band, and it also is going to have excess compression on the inside of your joint, like the tibiofemoral joint or the inside of the knee. So you can get excessive compression through the inside of the knee and excessive stretching on the outside of the knee. The other space that it can lead to injuries is on the outside of the hip, because it could stretch things over what we call the greater trochanter. And the greater trochanter has a lot of gluteal tendons that go to it. There's a bursa. So excess stress on the outside of the hip can lead to some of those running related injuries because of being on a cambered surface. So none of those 3 things are necessarily bad in and of themselves. Really the key is to go out and find versatility in your training. Change the amount of grade that you're going through, sometimes flat, sometimes hills. Change the speed that you're going at, and we'll go through this when we talk about different running workouts. And finally, try to get on different surfaces. And if you are in the country and the only place that you can run on is a cambered surface, try to even switch to the other side of the road during non-busy times, obviously in a safe way. So there's 3 more training errors that we dug a little bit deeper. Just look at your training habits and see if there's anything you can change to be the healthiest runner possible.